coming off of the summer, we have done a lot. And Tom has really confided a lot in me. And I feel, I guess you could say, emboldened enough to like really push the envelope on, you want to grow this church. You want to bring in new families. This is what you want. We can't be doing 1997 Baptists anymore. As much as I've pushed the envelope in things like social media and graphic design and things like that, I really start pushing hard during this time. And I end up finding a conference that is basically all for people who do what I do. And I find it, and I am planning that I am going to pay my own way, and I am going to go to this conference. And I'm going to go and I'm going to learn about how to do things better, because I am convinced that if I just do a better job at my job, the church will grow, because I'm the only thing.
Yeah, I know.
I'm the only thing holding back this church's growth.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul.
If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
It's all you. All on your shoulders.
Even as I say it, it sounds so stupid.
But I mean, like, this is that part of the puzzle where you're in this environment so much. And I honestly, like, I was telling you earlier before we started recording, like, I came across this thing on like TikTok or Facebook Reels or whatever, social media somewhere. And they are exposing like the underbelly of these like extremist cults. Yeah. And I came across this gal that was talking, and she was like, you know, people will reach out to me and they'll say, like, I can totally relate to your story. I was in a cult too. And then she's like, really, what cult? And they're like, the Baptist church, you know? And I get, like, for somebody who like ate, braised, slept, lived, like was in a compound, could not leave. Like, the people in the cult did not work. They only did the jobs of like extreme cult.
Yeah.
Like, to the level of like extreme. Like, I don't feel like when I say we were in a cult, like I'm talking about like that extreme level.
No.
But, you know, but then to also a point where people say, oh, I can relate to your story. And this lady was in like an extreme 24/7. You have no autonomy, like whatsoever. And people who just simply go to church can relate. Like, that right there should tell you we've got a problem. But on the other side of that, you don't understand that just because I got to go home and just because I got to have a job and I got to go to work and like I had moments away from the cult doesn't mean the cult, I actually left the cult or that the cult left me. Like we're talking about you and Brandy were told you couldn't be friends and you obeyed that.
To a level.
But you know what? No, but you know what I mean? Like, you didn't just be like, who the hell are you? You're a pastor at a church. I just come here on Sundays. Like you could have been at that level, like, or I'm just going to go to another church. Like, there's a level of like, just because I wasn't living in that church building doesn't mean that church building wasn't living in, you know, my whole world. What didn't revolve. You're there every time the doors are open. Everything you do is eat, breathe, sleep. You're working and thinking about it at home, you know, and everything you do revolves around the church.
Yeah.
How do I make the church better? How do I participate in church? What are we doing I can't do this because my church won't let me. Like, I can't talk to these people because my church won't let me. I'm at school and parent conferences telling my teacher about my church. Like, for real. Like, it's sick. But so, yeah, like, for you to be able to say that and people to hear, like, this is the true, honest thoughts that were going through my mind at that time. Yeah. Yes, we laugh about it now because it's absolutely insane. But at the time, I mean, we all had those thoughts like that. Like, you felt like the entire purpose of the church was on your shoulders. And if you said one thing wrong, the whole thing was going to fall apart, or you were going to be in so much trouble. People were going to go to hell if I said the wrong thing leading worship. Well, you thought the whole thing, like, it's your responsibility to do your job so that this thing can thrive.
I wasn't allowed to answer the phones in the church office because one time someone called. It was when Young Gun was still there and he was doing Thursday nights and Tom was doing Sundays. And they got on our website and they saw, you know, we had two different pastors doing two different things, not the same series, you know, two separate services. And they called and they asked what the difference between the services were. And I said, well, Sundays are definitely more seeker friendly and they're very light and more like life application, whereas Thursdays are more biblical based and we go like verse by verse through a book of the Bible. And there's teaching and life application, but it's from a more like cultural historical perspective. They were like, okay, perfect. I got off the phone and Tom chewed my ass. Yeah. Because to him, I told that person his sermons weren't biblical.
Yeah.
And I said, no. And he goes, yeah, you said Thursdays are Bible based. You didn't say that about Sundays. I teach with the Bible. I hold a Bible in my hand every Sunday.
Yeah, but you teach topically, not verse by verse.
Yeah. And
that's all she meant was like, it's not that you don't have Bible verses in there.
That one mistake. That's one mistake. That's all it took. I was never allowed to answer the phones again.
Yeah. And that level of being manipulated to where that's where you end up. Like you.
Yeah. The church isn't growing because I'm in charge of marketing. So if the church isn't growing, that's on me.
Stress and pressure and how bad that is, like, it's awful. Like, that's awful. Yeah. That's awful. And then you think about, I'm just thinking about the people that attended Come As You Are when we were there and the amount of like autoimmune disorders that people have, and knowing that, you know, some schools of thought will tell you that all autoimmune disorders are stress-based. And, you know, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But I'm just saying that, like, so many of them are stress-based, you know, and your body is reacting to that. It's like, what an unhealthy environment.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like people weren't coming in the doors. I was bringing people in the doors. It's just they weren't sticking.
Yeah.
Like, we had We had a ton. We had every single Sunday, we had at least a couple families that were first time guests,
Yeah.
but very rarely did they come back. And so I started looking for conferences. I started
know
looking
what?
for, how do you get them to stay? What do you do to follow up with them? How do you get them to go from a first time guest to a tither?
You know, if you had just known that we were in a cult, your marketing strategy would have worked a hell of a lot better.
I know, right? If I
Gosh, given
would've-
the right information, that place would be packed.
Yes. So I find this conference. It is in Atlanta, Georgia. And it is like a week. Well, hold on. It is like, I think it's 4 days. And so I had every intention of like, I'm going to pay my own way. I'm going to do this. And so before I even brought it up at the office, I talked to Justin. Hey, can we afford to make this happen? Are you going to be able to do, get the kids to school, make sure homework's done and dinner and all of that for a full week? Are you going to be able to do that if I go do this? Right. And it's, this is a big ask of now. I mean, I've gone places. You and I have gone to a podcasting conference for a whole week several times.
Yeah.
On multiple occasions.
Like, hey, I'm going. Bye. See you later.
Yeah. And because we're a team. But back then, this was a huge ask.
Yeah.
And so this wasn't like I'm going to women's retreat and I'm gone for 2 nights. This is I'm gone for a week, right? So Justin and I talk about it. We decide we're going to make it work. And I go and I tell Lori in the office, I'm going to talk to Tom today. This is what I want to do. I had to go to her because she was like the office administrator. So technically I had to let her know when I was going to be gone. And this whole thing was meant for me to go and be like, hey, I'm going to this conference. I'm paying for it myself. I'm doing all of it myself. I just want you to be aware I'm going to be gone from work for a week. So I tell Lori. Lori looks at this conference and she goes, this seems like really fun. I would like to go to this conference. So by the time Tom gets into the office, Lori has decided she's going also. So now not only are we telling Tom I'm not going to be there for a whole week, the main office lady, finance, main secretary is going to be gone for a week. So Tom looks at the conference and Tom decides, I think partly based off of all of the conferences that we've talked about up until this point, Tom wants to hear stuff for himself. He doesn't want me going to this conference because I have been kind of pushing the envelope a little bit in wanting to do different things. So I think he was a little nervous that I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to get all these cockamamie ideas of what I want to do. And he's going to have to be the bad guy and tell me no. So he wants to go to the conference and listen for himself. Right?
And really, that's like not in like, you have to put such a negative spin on that because it's not like he's like, I want to go and learn. Like,
no.
That's not his motivation. His motivation is he wants to make sure that he's like vetting it for you.
His exact
so
words
he can
were
correct whatever they tell you that's not right. That's really it.
His exact words were, I feel like I need to go with you because it would be far easier for me to tell you in the moment this isn't what we're doing here at Come As You Are than to have you get all excited and then you come home and try to communicate to me. Yeah. I would rather just go and listen for myself and make the decision for myself if we're going to do it or not.
Yeah. Which is just Tom speak for, I want to make sure that you don't go getting no cockamamie ideas and these poor people try to sell this, naive little woman here. I got to go and...
Yeah. We can't have anyone else
serving you filter for you.
Yeah. We can't have anyone else serving you Kool-Aid. You're drinking our Kool-Aid. So Tom is like, I'm going to go too. But if I'm going to go with you, Charlotte has to go because he can't go anywhere on, he can't travel without his wife. So Charlotte has to go. Then Charlotte says, well, I think Barbara Jean would feel left out if the whole office staff goes and we don't take Barbara Jean. So Barbara Jean, who comes into the office only on Mondays, and her sole job is to enter what the people counted on like Sunday after the tithes. We have volunteers who like count the tithes and offerings. She takes that paper and enters it into QuickBooks. But she consistently transposes numbers. So on Tuesday, Lori has to go and redo all the work that Barbara Jean did on Monday. She has to go and redo it because the numbers, the math isn't mathing. Yeah. So she has to go through and figure out how to fix it. And then Barbara Jean will take, once she puts everything into QuickBooks, she will take the deposit to the bank and go get the mail. And that's what she does. So that lady who takes the deposit to the bank and picks up the mail is going to feel left out at a church communications conference.
Well, this is why she went to the leadership conference too.
Yeah, so we have to take her with us. So then Charlotte says, well, if all of this is to build the church, really all of the leaders should be going. So Tom can go, and he's not only representing the leadership of the church, he's representing men's ministry also. Even though Tom isn't the leader of men's ministry, he's the leader of, Tom's not the leader of men's ministry, Old Reliable is. But Tom is going to represent men's ministry. Charlotte is representing women's and youth because she has taken youth group over from Young Gun. And then we're going to bring Brandy with us. Brandy for children's, which, don't get me wrong, at this time I was like freaking elated. Yes, we are allowed to be friends. We're going to go on this trip. We don't have our children. We don't have our husbands. This is going to be fun. Fun friend time, right? Brandy can barely work Facebook. If I need someone to help me promote something on Facebook, I have to tell her step by step what to do to like, comment, share. I have to tell her what to do. So she's not getting anything out of the social media stuff. Brandy, even Brandy is like, I don't understand why I'm going to this.
That's even better.
But we weren't going to push the envelope.
Free trip.
Free trip. She's feeling better after her miscarriage. We're finally allowed to be friends. This can be fun. So we go, and Tom and Charlotte get one hotel room together. They put Barbara Jean and Lori in a room together, which Lori was super pissed. She was so mad she was stuck in a room with Barbara Jean all week. And then me and Brandy. And so initially we were all supposed to pay, the church was going to pay for our tickets to the conference, but we were going to have to cover our travel and hotel and meals and stuff. And then as it got closer, I was budgeting money, right? And so I'm budgeting and I'm like, hey, how much do I need to pay? Because I'd like to pay a little bit every time my husband gets paid, I'd like to pay a little bit at a time to kind of help ease that
the blow.
Yeah. And Tom just kept saying, well, let's just wait and see. Let's just wait and see. And it came down to it. And Tom booked all of our flights. Tom booked the hotels. Tom got a rental car for us to drive around there. And Tom picked everywhere we were going to eat. Tom did the whole itinerary for the entire week. So what it initially was going to be just me and Lori, we were like, hey, what is some fun stuff to do in Georgia? We were going to fly out the day before, have a travel day, spend an extra day at the end, and like sightsee Atlanta, and like it was going to be fun, right? Nope, not with Tom. The conference starts. It starts at like, I think something like 10 a.m. the first day was like registration or whatever. We fly out at like 3:40 in the morning.
Yep.
The day the conference starts.
We're getting there, but off the plane at 8. We got to be at the hotel. You can splash your face with water and get to the conference. Let's go.
Yeah,
Drop your bags. Let's go.
Pretty much.
I've traveled with Tom before.
And then when the conference was over, the last day of the conference was over. Our flight was 2 hours later.
Yep.
We went straight from the conference to the airport.
Load up your bags, put them in the car. We're going to the conference, and we're going straight to the airport.
Yes. It felt like we were on vacation with Dad. And we had to do everything Dad wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, Tom is booking all this stuff, and I'm asking, how much does it, what do we owe? What do we owe? And he just kept saying, well, let's just wait and see. Let's just wait and see. So finally we get to like a couple weeks before the trip, and I'm like, I need to know what I need to pay for this. Like, I can't wait I need to know. And he's like, well, I think we have it mostly covered. I think everyone's going to owe probably $200 at the end of it, but let's wait till we get back from the trip and see how much everyone owes, what we spend on everything. So I'm just going to take the church credit card, and we'll just use the church card all week for our hotel, for our food, for everything. And then we'll just see what everyone owes when we get back. Okay. So we go. The conference was phenomenal. I learned so much. I loved it. Everyone else loved it. Like, everyone was taking notes. This is why Charlotte now has a Facebook page, because she decided at this conference she needed to be on social media. So like in the hotel, we're trying to help her get Facebook set up. A lot of the people were like people like me. They had the marketer, the person who does all of the marketing for Rick Warren.
Wow.
So Tom, she gets on stage and she introduces herself, and Tom looks at me dead in the eye and goes, take notes on everything she says. Yes, sir.
Okay. We get to do whatever Rick Warren's doing.
Yeah. And everything she said, I'm like, we would talk about it afterwards, right? We would all go to dinner and we would have to debrief. What did we learn this day and how are we going to implement it? And what did you get from her? Because she's Rick Warren's person. And I'm like, I'm doing everything she's doing. I'm doing the same shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already doing it. And so Tom met this pastor. He got up and he talked about how he started doing mini videos. So like now, like, keep in mind, this is like, 2019. So I think TikTok is a thing, but it's not, it's not what it is today. And so he's mostly putting it out there on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff. But he gets up and his whole talk is about how he started doing these like little videos of like, hey, this is Pastor so-and-so, and I'd love to invite you to come, this Sunday. And he's like, I don't have a fancy camera. I don't have all this stuff. I have my iPhone, and I talk into my phone. And so we are, we're connecting with these people who are only seeing us online during the week. And I'm getting people who initially would just kind of come sporadically on a Sunday. Now I'm showing up in their feed. I'm showing up in what they're already doing. And this is where it finally clicks for Tom that he can go and quote unquote be in the community without actually having to talk to people for real. And so that's his biggest thing, is he's going to start doing these videos to the point where he goes and seeks this pastor out during a break, and they exchange phone numbers, and Tom asks this guy to mentor him in how he is going to effectively communicate to his community online. Tom asked someone to mentor him.
Like, mind blown.
Yeah.
Like, that is like, yeah, it's crazy. Like,
Brandy and I were giddy. Like,
yeah.
we were like, oh my gosh, it's happening.
Yeah.
He sees this is the change we've been waiting for. He sees this is going to be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were so excited.
Yeah.
So we're on like probably I think it's day 3 of the 4-day conference. And in the morning, Tom gets a phone call like during the morning session, and he goes out into the lobby and he never comes back. And so Charlotte makes it seem as though Tom is so exhausted that he needed to go lay down and take a nap. And we kind of laugh and joke like, oh, haha, Tom is old.
Yeah.
But then we started planning this podcast.
Yeah.
And we start timelining.
Like, wait a minute.
What was that phone call about, Melissa?
Well, you know, it's so funny because I don't know, it's not even funny. Like, we keep going in this timeline, and you know, we go through phases where we talk about my personal life and my marriage, just because at some point it's like any given Tuesday, you know, like just because we're not talking about it doesn't mean that there's not crazy stuff going on in my house. But I do just get like, I just can't inundate you with like all of it all the time, because it's just the same stuff, you know, different day, different part of the cycle. But, you know, like we thought for a long time, I thought this was an incident that happened where like the cops were called and like it was a huge thing. And I'll tell that story in just a second, but that we had like moved out of our house, packed up and moved into Tom and Charlotte's house. And so I'll tell that story here in just a minute, but the more we did that, I was putting pieces together and I'm like, wait a minute, it can't be this Georgia trip because it doesn't align with when I started homeschooling, you know, and I talked in just a previous episode where I talked about, you know, like the cops being called and things like this. But the more I thought about it, you know, part of the cycle was, and I would say at this point in our marriage, because this is 2019, I am the main breadwinner in our home. That's a big problem. We never have any money, but then when we need it for like something, I always seem to have money. And this really frustrated Froggy because he's like, you don't have any money. And then all of a sudden we need it for like something like an emergency, like something comes up or, you know, something. And I'm like, oh, I can pay that. Like, I've got that. Like, he's like, but you keep telling me you have no money. So you have all these secret bank accounts. And I'm like, when I say I have no money, I mean, I have no money for what you want to spend money on. I have money to pay the bills and I have money in case something happened. Like, I have like emergency money. And really I realized like that he was just frustrated, like, cause he didn't know. And I was but this was one of my boundaries that I was very big on because I always had money if I had to, like, I would be okay. Not big money, not like I could pay my bills for 3 months, but at any given time, I was okay for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like
That was your safety net.
Give me enough time to figure out what I was going to do and to put enough things in place to get to the next step. That's all the money I ever kept on me. But this always would cause a problem because I always had secret stashes. And like it wouldn't be a problem until something came up and I would be like, well, yeah, I actually can pay that.
Yeah.
And I'll just take care of that. Like I got it taken care of. It's fine. But like, but the cycles would be like closer together, you know, like I want to say, I mean, my gut tells me it's like 3-month cycles, right? Of like the love bombing to the complete, you know, I'm kicking you out of the house, or love bombing, kicking you out of the house. Cycles were probably like 3 months at this point.
Yeah.
And then those little cycles would be in bigger cycles that were like 6-month cycles because there's like seasonal. And I don't think I'm not going to say there were like, I know the 3 months sounds like it could be 4 times a year, but it's really not like, and maybe it was, but the big cycle. So maybe 2 of those 4 cycles were huge.
Yeah.
And so
giant blow ups.
Yeah. Like summer and winter, right? Like those were the 2, like nothing would happen in the spring and the fall, like nothing big. But summer and winter, for some reason, were the like, I don't know if the equinoxes just lined up, but we were having some struggles. And so like the more I thought about it, and whenever Tom and Charlotte would go out of town, like, I don't know what that safety net is, or if it was just like,
well, whatever, and it's almost like he's perpetually an adolescent.
Yeah.
Like, oh, mom and dad are in our town, I'm going to throw a party.
Right.
Like,
and then it blows up in your face and the cops are called and then you're in trouble. And then you got to call mommy and daddy. Like I think that's a great way of putting it. And so I would say it was really honestly, like when I say any given Tuesday, like, cause I've mentioned before that like this man would wake up in the morning and yell.
Yeah.
For 45 minutes about God knows what.
Yeah.
Something like, and he was yelling at me, but I was like, I would just like put my pillow over my head and plug my ears and just like, he would just yell and be belligerent and just mean and awful and nasty for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then turn around and be like, I got to go to work now. Bye. Like, and this was like a religious cycle, like something that would happen religiously in our home. Like, did it happen every day? Probably not, but 4-5 times a week. Like, and I would be like, I don't know what you're mad at. And so like, I just, at first, you know, and it's like funny because like at first you start, like you say like, what the hell are you mad at? What are you, like, I didn't do anything. Like, I just woke up, shut up. Like, I'm still sleeping. Like, I'm yelling at you because I'm sleeping. Like, you're waking me up, yelling at me. And I don't have, like, did you have a bad dream? Did I do something in your dream? Because you're yelling at me and I am not even awake yet. Like, and then eventually I just wouldn't say anything, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, that's what I mean when I say, like, any given Tuesday. But if I remember correctly, some blow up happened and it was an incident where because at this point I'm like on the verge of like done, like, so it doesn't take much. And I'm just like, get out, just go away. Like, go away. I'm done. Like, just go away. And so that would be a continual fight from this point on, is that like, all you do is you just say, go away and get out. And I have nowhere to go. And, you know, and then of course, mommy and daddy are out of town. So he really has nowhere to go, which would be why he would call, you know, his dad and be like, I don't have anywhere to go and she kicked me out again, you know, and all this bad stuff. But not like, hey, I just broke everything in the house and, you know, all the anything else that he would have done.
Yeah.
But so I'm pretty sure like that it was an incident like that. It was one of the bigger blow ups where he didn't have anywhere to go because I had kicked him out. And so I probably ended up having to let him come back because he didn't have anywhere to go. Like, your parents can let you go stay at their house, but sometimes they would do that if they weren't in town. They wouldn't always let him come. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
Like, he would have to ask permission, like, for people who were very much like, what's ours is yours, and come over, and like, he was not like, he would have to call mommy and daddy and be like, hey, can I come get this? And like, use the code on the garage. Like, he would have to get permission to go into their house.
Yeah.
Where like, I would just walk into my mom's house.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
like that's my relationship with my
and-
mom. Like, if I still lived by my mom and she was out of town and I needed to go borrow the rake, I would just go over and take it, use it, and bring it back.
Well, and keep in mind, like, so we were having like pool parties at like the beer ministry house, and then that kind of fell apart. And so now Brandy is getting closer with Charlotte. And so Brandy's having to invite like moms from mom's group over and swim at Tom and Charlotte's house. So Tom, in the beginning, Charlotte was there for all of it. Then it becomes to the point where, okay, we're doing this and moms are really coming, but Charlotte doesn't want to have to be there for it all the time. And it's a giant pain in her butt that it's like, and now what started off as like, oh, just come use our house and it'll be great. And what, like you said, what's yours is ours and it's for ministry. We built the pool for ministry. We built the home entertainment center, the home theater for ministry. Like all of this stuff. Well, now you have to be there. And it's a pain in your ass.
Yeah.
So Brandy had the garage code.
Yeah.
Brandy had a key to be able to get into the door in the basement. So if kids had to go to the bathroom while we were swimming,
Yeah.
we could go in the door.
Because you were allowed to be in the backyard and then you were allowed to use that bathroom.
Yeah.
But that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to like ask.
Yeah. No, yeah. No, I know. So it was just weird. Like, it was
Yeah.
just, and I bet you if you asked, they might be like, he didn't have, like, there probably wasn't like a rule, but it's just an insight into the family dynamic of where he still felt like you were saying, like, that
He felt like he
adolescent-
had to. Yeah.
that adolescent mindset, like a child, where, you know, and I may even just call my mom and be like, hey, I'm going to go over and grab the rake, right? Like, I would have an adult conversation. I would, you know, but he would really, it was really odd. And I thought it was odd at the time. Like, he really took on that adolescent, you know, demeanor with his parents. So anyway, the story that we thought went here, the whole, like, for a long time, and then totally forgot to tell when it did actually happen in the timeline. But I did mention a couple episodes ago, like, the cops being called. And so if we go back just a little bit to when I first started homeschooling in August of 2018, that school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so something happened over the summer. The neighbors called the cops on Froggy, and it was a big, huge deal. Like, a big, huge deal. Like, it was somebody opened up the curtains and they were like, this is not okay. And it really wasn't. And the cops got involved. Or maybe they just threatened. Did they just? I think they called the cops. There's times they called the cops and there were times they didn't. And I'm sorry, but like, it is a jumbled mess up here. So anyway, this is how sick this whole situation was. Froggy was frightened, like legitimately fearful, frightened that something was going to happen to him, that he was going to get in trouble.
He was going to be arrested.
Like, yeah, like, this was like, and so we went and had a meeting with Tom and Charlotte at the church. And this was like what are we going to do? The neighbors are crazy. They're trying to persecute Froggy. Poor Froggy. And they have no idea what's going on. They're crazy. They've got it in their head, this cockamamie story about what's going on in our house, and none of it's true. And they're threatening to call the cops, or the cops are being called. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this has just been an ongoing battle at this point. And they must have called the cops, because it was like they really went through with it, right?
Yeah.
So we're having this meeting with Tom and Charlotte, and they decide, Froggy, Tom, and Charlotte, and me was there, decide that the best thing that we can do is move out of our house and move into their basement to get away from the crazy neighbors, and give it like, I don't know, like give it time to cool off or whatever, or figure out what we're going to do. Like, I don't know what the end game was, or what the plan was, but just that in the moment that, I mean, we're talking about like what you would consider, like, I know we've made it sound like these aren't rational adults, but you know, this is supposed to be rational people, like rational adults, like people in authority and like church leadership. This is a pastor and his wife, right? And this is what we came up with. This is the best course of action, so that the neighbors don't, and the cops don't get more involved, and that Child Protective Services doesn't show, like, because they're crazy, because the neighbors are crazy.
Yeah. No, like, we're going to sit down and have a conversation with, like, a mediator with the neighbors, and let's talk about, what do you think's going on in our home? Let's talk about it. Or even let's have a conversation with the authorities of, like, I don't know what you think Froggy's done, but that's not what's going on here. And open yourself up to an investigation, because let's face it, innocent people have nothing to hide.
Right.
Instead,
so we're going to go hide.
Yeah.
In the pastor's basement.
We're going to go hide in mommy and daddy's basement.
So,
which I will say, their basement was very nice. It's not like it was like, you know, you were down in an unfinished basement with a concrete floor.
Right.
Like, I mean, you had a home theater, you had your own kitchen. Like,
right. So my older two boys don't live at my house at this point, right? Because they're adults and, you know, they have lives and they are doing their own thing. My oldest daughter is 18.
Mm-hmm.
So we leave her at the house to live at the house at 18. Like, you can have the house, right? This is you have the house to yourself now. You're 18 years old. You have the house. And Froggy and I, this is so asinine. Froggy and I and the two littlest girls, the two smaller, younger girls, move into Tom and Charlotte's basement. For like 6 months.
Yeah, it was a long time. And that's why we thought that this went with this story when we were in Georgia, because we thought, like, oh, this is when you moved out of the...
Because they were out of town. And so what happened is we move into their basement. Like, we're living there. There's a kitchen. There's bedrooms. Like, we are living there. We're coming and going from there. I check in on the house, you know, making sure it's all good. I'm paying the bills at the house, like paying the bills at the house, living in their basement, right? My 18-year-old daughter's like, it's creepy being here by myself at night. Like, what the hell, right? Like, this is absolutely insane. And then Tom and Charlotte go out of town. And like I said, we had been there for like 6 months. So they go out of town. And I mean, and they were gone like a week, you know, or whatever. And a few days into their trip, Froggy loses his absolute everlasting mind. And he starts, I'm like, he is going to break their house.
Yeah.
Like the stuff he does in my house. And I honestly should have let him do it.
Yeah.
You know, but like, so he flips. I don't even know what words I can say on this podcast anymore. What words I can't. He flips the F out, right?
Yeah.
Raging. I packed everything up and I moved back to my house. And I left him there.
Yeah.
You want to destroy your parents' house? I'm not going to be here. I'm leaving, right? And then when Tom and Charlotte got back from their vacation and they were like, what is going on? I'm like, well, I saved your house from getting destroyed. That didn't even
Yeah.
faze them. Like they just were like, oh, and just kept going. Like it's like they didn't even like. It's like I was talking to a wall.
Yeah.
There was no like, oh, really?
What happened?
Like
What
no
led to that?
response
What
to that.
was he doing?
No response. No response. They came in hot. What are you guys like? They were hot. They were like, what are you guys doing? Because they were mad that Froggy was there and like, you guys are crazy. And what are you doing? Just moving and packing up like this like, they responded to me. They had a reaction to me packing up my stuff and moving back to my house.
Because crazy Melissa was crazy.
Yeah. But as soon as I said, you're welcome, I protected your house from getting destroyed by me leaving because obviously I'm the object of the rage. I left so your house didn't get destroyed. No response. Absolutely none. And so we thought that this happened with this trip to Georgia because they were out of town, but they were in the Caribbean, It was February. They were in the Caribbean, sunning themselves on a beach while I was protecting their home from their absolutely raging psychotic son. But, you're welcome. And honestly, I should have let him destroy the crap out of that house.
Oh, no, 100%. You should have let him rip her cabinets off and put holes in her wall.
Yeah.
And break her
absolutely.
little glass table that she
all
had.
of it. Yeah. I should have just let him. Like I should have just stayed and been like, start punching the walls, buddy. Let's go.
Yep.
They should have, but didn't.
Yeah.
But then, so that happened in 2018, but here we are in 2019 and he's calling daddy again because, like I said, any given Tuesday, he's throwing fits and raging and
yeah.
And if I do remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that we were no longer at like, there was no like progressive build up.
Yeah.
It was all or nothing at this point.
Yeah.
Everything was fine.
Yeah.
Or it was not fine. And I was having it less and less. I was like, get out, get out, get out. Like there were things that happened during this time. I talked about I'm talking about the time that he pulled the emergency brake while we're driving I was driving 65 miles an hour down a highway and pulls the emergency brake. Right. Mm-hmm. So we're talking from stuff like that to like punching my windshield to like, and
not just punching your windshield, putting a hole
with his fist in my windshield. Fist. Yeah. To like, ripping cabinets off and holes in walls and breaking down doors and, inflicting physical harm on the people in this house. And so did the neighbors should have called 100%, mm-hmm. I don't, but when you're in it, it's just, it can't justify it. You can't make excuses for it. All you could say is like, I was blinded, I was duped and I was blinded and I did not make the right choices and, but I am now. So that's what's important. But all of those incidents were things that were like 0 to 60.
Well, and it happens so often that it's not like you can say, oh, this one time or this one time or this one time. So we thought this big blow up where you had to move out and that time sticks out because you were literally trying to keep him from destroying his parents' house.
Yeah.
So it sticks out differently in your brain. That's why we thought it was this, but in reality, it was just another one of his freakouts and you asked him to leave and he needed somewhere to go. So he needed to call mommy and daddy and ask permission.
Yeah. 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 And you're right. It happened so much. They all just blend together.
Bleed together. Yeah.
Like there's only a few things where you have them time stamped because this was just daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. So we think Tom is old and taking naps in the VIP room. But in reality, he's on the phone talking to Froggy.
Yeah, right. He would have to like talk him down. Like Tom was really the only person who could talk him down. Like he was like, I never called the cops, but I called Tom.
Yeah.
You know, I would be like, you need to come and get your son.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing this. Like, you need to come. I mean, Charlotte came and intervened one time, and that man had no shame. Like the stuff that he said in front of his mom, and she just sat there.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, I've had enough of this. I have a funeral to go to. And I packed up my kids, and like we were getting ready to go to a funeral in Nebraska.
Yeah.
And he threw a fit. And his mom had to come because he was breaking stuff. And then the stuff that he said in front of his mom, I was like, I'm like, you're not going to do anything? Like, you're not going to say anything?
You're just going to sit there and watch your son
sit there
be
and
an
watch
ass.
him act like this and talk to me this way? Like, I just was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I packed up the kids and I drove. I can't believe you left. Yeah, I did. I had somewhere to be. And you want to act like a dumbass? I'm sorry. I had somewhere to go. And no, I don't want to spend my weekend with you anymore.
As a mom, like, I mean, my oldest is an adult and he has a girlfriend. And like, there was even one day where he was like sitting on the couch watching TV, and he like looks at her. He's like, "Hey babe, can you go get me a soda?" And I was like, no, you can get your ass up and get your own damn soda. She doesn't need to go get one for you. Like, as a mom, I'm like, you're not going to treat her that way. Like,
yeah, I think of all the things I would do in that situation as a mom, you know, and what she did, that's not one of them. Like, I just wouldn't. Like, I just wouldn't. Like, looking back at
interesting. I wonder, because she said stuff to other people. She had no problem telling people what she thought. Even you know, if it was like in a passive aggressive way.
Yeah.
But like, for her to just sit there, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Of like, it makes you wonder what that dynamic was in their home.
And I feel like
Tom.
I feel like I not make excuses for it, but I justified it, I guess, as thinking like, well, what is she going to do? Like, she's 20 years older than I am. And he's probably one of the strongest people that I've come across.
Yeah.
Like, physically, what is she? It's because she's his mom. Like, I think I chalked it up to she was probably scared,
intimidated. Yeah.
Intimidated. Like, what is she going to do? Be like, son, you really should stop. And, you know, so maybe I feel like that's how I justified it in the moment. Like, if I really thought about it, what did I expect her to do? Because I expected her to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But rather than be mad at her for not doing anything and not saying anything, because that didn't make sense in my mind, I feel like I justified, well, I mean, maybe, but she didn't look scared.
Yeah.
She didn't act scared. And she wasn't like, we need to get out of here. Yeah. And let's protect the kids. Like, there was nothing. Like, absolutely shut down, nothing.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. Like, there's just so many strange things. Like, you really do. I wonder what the big secret is that they're hiding, because I know they're hiding something. I know that there is something. There's some skeleton in the closet that we will probably never know. And some weird, strange family dynamic that like motivates a lot of the things that they do. But I don't know what it is. But like, just to be, you have a lot of opinions when it's not happening in your home. But when it is, you have absolutely nothing to say about it. Like, that boggles my mind.
Yeah.
You know, because like, she would have opinions if somebody else came and said that this was going on.
Oh yeah, she would jump in and
talk a lot of smack about like, oh, well, she should do this because he's he's doing you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you got opinions, but none when it's your son. Like,
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
Something to think about.
Yeah. So we think that's what Tom is dealing with. We know he's dealing with something with Froggy, because Froggy ends up telling Brandy later on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, my dad, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, we thought Tom was taking a nap.
We thought he was taking a nap, but he was really on the phone with you.
We're gonna go more into this Georgia trip of kind of what went down. Tom said some really crappy stuff to us. Basically took us all out to dinner at what's the Jimmy Buffett place?
Oh, Margaritaville.
Margaritaville. Yeah, so we go out to dinner at Margaritaville. He was so excited to go to Margaritaville. And we're sitting on this beautiful patio overlooking like this beautiful like lake and surrounded by all these trees and everything. And it's like gorgeous, right? And he basically uses that dinner to tell us how much we suck. So I'm going to go more into that over on Patreon. But we come back from this and Tom's all in when it comes to marketing. Tom is all in and he is excited to bring what we learned at this conference to the masses at the church.
Yeah, this was a big like night and day turnaround. We're going from paper to digital, baby.
And not everyone was on board for the changes.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode was brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.